Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. It wasn't a suspicion. It was not a serious illness. It wasn't a fainting mistaken for death. 4 days had already passed since the burial. In Bethany, Martha and Mary's house was full of people crying. Relatives, neighbors, family friends, people sitting on the floor, voices low, lament in the air. Death had entered that house like a shadow too heavy to ignore. And the most painful detail is this: Jesus had been warned. The sisters sent a clear message. Lord, the one you love is sick. John 11:3. They didn't just say, Lazarus is sick. They said, the one you love. It was a way of remembering the relationship. Lazarus was not a stranger. Martha and Maria were not just distant acquaintances. That house in Bethany was a place of welcome for Jesus. He had been there other times. He had taught there. He had been received there. The message carried faith and urgency. Lord, come. He is sick. You love him. There is still time. But Jesus didn't leave immediately. John records that, upon hearing that Lazarus was sick, Jesus remained where he was for 2 days. This delay is one of the most difficult parts of the story, because whoever reads it already knows the ending. He knows that Lazarus will come out of the tomb. You know there will be a miracle. Know that the glory of God will be seen. But Martha and Mary did not know this as they waited. For them, every hour had weight. Maybe they looked at the road several times. Maybe someone said, "He must be coming." Perhaps, when they saw Lazarus getting worse, they clung to the hope of hearing footsteps outside. But Jesus did not arrive before death. Lazarus died. The body was prepared according to Jewish customs. It was wrapped in banners, placed in a tomb, probably a cavity excavated in the rock, common in that region. A stone was placed at the entrance. The house that expected healing started receiving people to mourn. This is where the question arises in the hearts of many people. Why did Jesus delay? The Bible itself responds in a profound but not hasty way. When he received the news, Jesus said, "This illness is not for death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." John 11:4. Jesus was not saying that Lazarus would not die physically. He was saying that death would not be the end of that story. The problem is that for those who are inside the pain, the interval between the promise and the fulfillment seems like silence. After 2 days, Jesus told his disciples that he would return to Judea. They were scared. Shortly before, the Jewish leaders had tried to stone him. Returning to that region seemed dangerous. Then Jesus spoke of Lazarus in a way that the disciples did not understand at first. "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going to wake him up." John 11:11. They thought of common sleep. Jesus then spoke clearly. Lazarus died. John 11:14. This phrase did not take Jesus by surprise. He knew. He was in control. Even so, he walked to Bethany. When he arrived, Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. This detail matters a lot. In ancient Jewish tradition, there was the idea that death was fully confirmed after the 3rd day. The 4th day removed any human doubt. There was no room to say that Lazarus just looked dead. There was no room for confusion. When Jesus arrived, the situation was already impossible to human eyes. Martha knew that he was coming and went out to meet him. Maria stayed at home. Martha arrives with a sentence that mixes faith and pain. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." John 11:21. She does not accuse Jesus directly, but the phrase carries a wound. If the Lord were here. Martha believed in the power of Jesus. She knew he could have healed Lazarus. The problem was, in her mind, there was a window of time. While Lazarus was sick, there was hope. After he died, everything changed. Jesus replied, "Your brother will rise again." John 11:23, Martha understood it as a promise for the last day. Many Jews believed in the final resurrection, when God would raise the dead at the end of time. Then she said, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." John 11:24, Martha creates in the future. But Jesus was about to reveal that hope was not just a distant event. Hope was before her, in person. Then he declared one of the strongest phrases in the Gospel of John. "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live." John 11:25, Jesus didn't just say he had the power to resurrect. He said that he himself is the resurrection. Life is not something that Jesus borrows from somewhere else. Life is in him. Death does not face an ordinary prophet, nor a religious teacher, nor a powerful healer. Death faces the author of life himself. Martha heard that and responded with faith. "Yes, Lord, I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God who should come into the world." John 11:27. After that, Martha returned and called Mary in secret. "The Master has arrived and calls you." Maria got up quickly. The people who were in the house consoling her thought she would go to the grave and cry. They followed behind her. When Mary arrived where Jesus was, she fell at his feet. Her sentence was almost the same as Martha's. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." John 11:32, two sisters. The same pain, the same sentence. But Mary wasn't standing around discussing theology. She was lying at Jesus' feet, crying. John says that Jesus saw Mary crying and also saw the Jews who were with her crying. Then he was deeply moved. The word used in the text points to an intense emotion. It wasn't coldness. It wasn't distance. Jesus did not look at mourning as someone impatient just thinking, "Stop crying, I'll fix it." He entered at that moment. He asked, "Where did you put him?" They responded, "Lord, come and see." Then comes the shortest Bible verse in many translations, and one of the greatest in meaning. Jesus cried. John 11:35. This sentence deserves silence. Jesus knew that Lazarus would come out of the tomb. I knew that in a few minutes that family would see a miracle. I knew the stone would be removed. He knew that death would be confronted by his voice. Still, he cried. This reveals something precious about God. Christ's power does not nullify his compassion. Jesus does not treat human pain as a small detail. He doesn't despise tears just because he knows the ending. He does not approach those who suffer in cold haste, as if the person should simply understand the doctrine and stop feeling. Jesus wept before a tomb that he was about to empty. Those who were there noticed. "See how much I loved him." John 11:36. Others, however, questioned. Couldn't he, who opened the blind man's eyes, prevent him from dying? John 11:37. This question still appears in other ways. Couldn't God have prevented it? Couldn't it have arrived sooner? Couldn't it have been cured? Couldn't you have changed the story? Jesus did not respond with a long explanation. He went to the tomb. It was a cave, and there was a rock over it. Then Jesus gave a simple and weighty order. "Take away the stone." John 11:39, Martha reacted. "Sir, it already smells bad because it's been 4 days." Martha believed in Jesus, but still saw the reality of death. The stone was closed. The body had been there for 4 days. The natural process had already begun. Jesus replied, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" John 11:40. The stone has been removed. Now everyone stood before the open tomb. Jesus looked up and prayed to the Father. His prayer showed fellowship, trust, and purpose. He made it clear that the miracle would happen so that people would believe that the Father had sent him. Then he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" John 11:43. It was not a death wish. It was an order. The voice that called light in the beginning now called a man out of the tomb. Lazarus left. The hands and feet were wrapped in bandages, the face covered with a scarf. The man they had all buried was standing before them. Jesus then said, "Untie him and let him go." John 11:44. This order also speaks volumes. Jesus called Lazarus from death to life, but told people to remove the bandages. The miracle was divine. The care around also had human participation. Lazarus came out alive, but still involved in the signs of burial. It touches our lives. There are people that Jesus has already brought out of places of death, but they still carry old sashes, old fears, old guilt, old habits, ancient identities, things that belong to the tomb but remain attached to the body of someone who received life. Jesus doesn't just call out, he also orders release. Untie him. The resurrection of Lazarus was a sign. In John's Gospel, Jesus' miracles are called signs because they point to something greater than the miracle itself. Lazarus came back to life, but one day he would die again. Jesus, however, would be resurrected, never to die again. The miracle in Bethany pointed to the greater victory that would take place in Jerusalem. A short time later, Jesus would also be in front of a tomb. But on the third day, the stone would not be removed for him to leave because he needed help. It would be removed to show that he had already won. Lazarus left because Jesus called him. Jesus left because death could not keep him. This story speaks directly to our expectation. Martha and Mary waited for Jesus to arrive before death. He arrived later, but it arrived with a bigger revelation than they imagined. They wanted a sick person to be cured. Jesus revealed his power over death. Sometimes we also limit God to what we ask for in the beginning. We ask him to resolve a situation in a certain way, within a deadline, with a specific answer. When that deadline passes, we think it's over. Bethany teaches that the delay we perceive can be the setting where God will reveal something deeper. That doesn't make the pain easy. Mary cried. Martha suffered. Jesus wept. Biblical faith does not require emotional pretense. You can believe and cry at the same time. You can trust and still miss it. You can worship and still say, "Lord, I don't understand." What you cannot conclude is that tears prove the absence of God. In Bethany, Jesus was weeping together. There is also a personal question in this story. Which stone needs to be removed? The stone did not resurrect Lazarus. It was Jesus who was resurrected. But the order was clear. Take away the stone. There are stones that lie in front of dead places within us. Stone of unbelief, stone of pride, guilt stone, fear stone, stone of religiosity without delivery. Christ has the voice that calls life, but he often tells us to stop protecting the tomb. Martha said, "It already smells bad." This sentence is sincere. No one likes to open the place where death has already left its mark. But Jesus is not scared by what we hide. He does not back down from the smell of our history. Don't move away from the broken parts. It does not lose authority in the face of what has already passed the human deadline. His voice still enters where no one else enters. Lazarus, come out. This phrase carries authority over graves, but it also carries tenderness over people called by name. Jesus did not shout to a faceless crowd. He called Lazarus, The God of life calls by name. Perhaps this is what reaches us most. Jesus does not arrive just to overcome death as a concept. He arrives at the house, in the mourning, in the family, in the wound, in the phrase repeated by the sisters, in the tomb with stone, in the hidden crying. He arrives where hope was buried. The story ends with many Jews believing in him. Others went to tell the Pharisees, and from then on the leaders began to plan Jesus' death with even more force. The miracle that brought Lazarus out also pushed Jesus closer to the cross. For Lazarus to live, Jesus walked towards his own death. This is the gospel. Christ enters into our death to give us his life. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. John 11:25. This promise is not small. She supports those who have lost someone, supports those who fear the future. It supports those who look at dead areas of their own lives. Support those who think that Jesus arrived late. He is never late to reveal glory. In the eyes of Martha and Maria, 4 days were proof of the end. In Jesus' eyes, 4 days were the stage where the voice of life would be heard. If you believe that Jesus still calls people out of the tombs of the soul, write in the comments, "Come out." The stone was closed. The house was crying. The body was in the tomb. But life was coming along the road to Bethany.